still paying those people a full salary. Do you like the idea of a bench without the fixed cost? So you can actually end up having three types of benches.
Welcome to another edition of Outsized Advantage, a podcast about agile talent and flexible workforce models. I'm Niclas Thelander, founder of Outsized. I've got Anurag Bhalla with me.
Oh.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well.
Anurag is my co-founder and head of Asia Pacific and companion for many years now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excited to be with you after such a long time.
Yeah, really great. So today we're going to have a slightly different topic, and it's more kind of product focused, right? Yeah. It's about what we call virtual benches for companies. So we'll go through what is a virtual bench, how is it different to other types of talent on demand models, and why do we think it has some strong benefits for clients, right? Yeah. So I guess without further ado, why don't you start with just telling what is it and how is it different?
Yeah, great, absolutely. So I think those of us that have worked in consulting or used consulting firms will have heard the word bench. Right. I think most people probably know what it is, but let me just explain it just in case. So consulting firms will always run a bench, and essentially a bench is people that aren't currently deployed on a billable project. So a consulting firm will always look to have a bench available to ensure that they can ramp up based on the demand pipeline that they're building. What they don't want to have is winning projects and then a long lead time to be able to ramp up and deliver those projects because it impacts revenue and profitability. So you're always trying to run an optimal, layer of a bench so that you can, you never have to say no to work, right? So the consulting firms
like a little bit overstaffed.
A little bit overstaffed. That's how, people not from the consulting sector should think. A bit of fat in the system, which allows you to then ramp up, just in case you need it. And especially because they're so focused, obviously, on billing, right, and winning engagements and deploying talent, they want to never say no to their clients, right? So they always want to be available for them. So hugely important capability, and it's become a big infrastructure within these organizations, right? Where they have people that run their benches, that deploy people from their bench, they have staffers that understand the talent currently on their bench and available, and then try and match that bench talent they have to the right case or the right project or the right partner, depending on the timing. Now, the great thing about that bench is it brings huge amounts of flexibility for the consulting firm to, in one regard, to say, hey, I can quickly respond to demand. I can quickly bring in capability where I need it. And so it gives them that ability to execute all the time. But where it's not flexible is in the cost base, right? So, and in terms of the nature of skills on that bench. So even though it's a bench, the bench is fixed. It's whoever you've hired that isn't on a project. Whatever skills those are, whatever experiences those people have, that's what it is, right? So it's a fixed capability bench, if you want to talk about that. It's changing. The only reason it changes is people are coming on and off bench.
So there's different people on the bench, obviously. Cost stays the same.
Cost stays the same. So your cost is always there. You're still paying those people a full salary. They could be on, and I've been in consulting firms when you've had multiple months on, and that might just be me.
You were mainly on the bench, as I recall.
That's why I had time to set up.
Where's Anurag? He's on the bench.
He's on the bench. So you're paying those people whether they're on a project, whether they're billing out or not. So often, it's awful being on the bench because you're constantly, you get the worst work, right? You're constantly working on proposals. You're doing these little internal projects because they don't want you to just sit there and take a salary. So it's like, well, let's put this bench to work and get them to do something. So it's awful for the talent on the bench because it's not a great place to be. Your billable time isn't there, and you're not learning, you're not developing, and you're getting all the crumbs of work. And it's not great for the organization, right? To have to constantly run that and be worried about if that bench is increasing, the cost base is increasing, so have to get people off the bench very quickly. And it's not great for their external clients, because often what that creates is a pressure to deploy those people, even if maybe those aren't the right people for the project. So, if you do win a project with your client, you're going to look at your bench first. Now, whether that bench makeup is exactly what that project needs, you're obviously ideally trying to do that, but at times you just have to put on board the people that are available at the time.
And ultimately also, obviously, clients are paying for that unproductive bench as well, right? So that cost base goes into the charge, the fees that, the hourly fees that consulting firm is charging.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So it impacts, the whole value chain. That's
the traditional bench.
That's the traditional bench. So we spent probably a bit too much time on the traditional bench, but it's important to understand that, because the core concept of that is the flexibility to ramp up. But what it doesn't give you the ability to do is ramp down, or the ability to quickly change up the makeup. But we took that concept and we said, well, actually, isn't that a great concept to build a more proactive, forward-thinking, independent talent solution around? So up until a year ago, we'd very much been focused on what I'd call the talent on demand value proposition. Organizations would need talent and need it yesterday, and by building our community and our platform and our service, we're able to service that immediacy of need, high quality, talent quickly for project-based work or contractual roles. We're able to service that very quickly and react. But it still was quite a reactive value proposition and service model, right? Where you'd wait for an organization to say, hey, I need this, and you deliver them that. And then you'd wait for them to come contact you, hey, I need this, and then you deliver them the solution. But as we started to work more closely with our clients and more deeply and more broadly across the organizations, it allowed us to build a really great insight base around actually, and sometimes even more than they knew, around what are your consistent themes around the type of skills that you're constantly in need for. And where are the skills that you seem to like to ramp up and ramp down? So either the skills that you just have a shortage of, or you consistently have demand for, or the skills that you're constantly trying to ramp up and ramp down and therefore don't have enough in-house capacity. So either capacity or capability. And you started to see these themes develop. And what we started to do was say, actually, to move to a more proactive model, what if we proactively built up pools, and we used to call them talent pools of talent aligned to these demand trends. And so we took out our demand insights from an organization and said, okay, this organization always needs these skills, these 5 skill segments, and they're always looking for those skill segments in these 3 markets. So what we started to do was build up pools of talent within those skill segments, within those markets, so that when our clients used to come to us, we'd say, ta-da, here it is. Funny enough, we have that talent. So initially it started off as an efficiency driver for us, right?
Be prepared for future demand
for us, to make sure that we could deliver what they wanted, which was talent on demand. So it was really a solution from a delivery point of view, and how do we build a better service, and how do we become more efficient and make sure that we're servicing our clients. But that then evolved to a thought around, well, hey, there's a product in there that we can develop for our clients. And the concept that ideated around that was an independent workforce in a box, which said, hey, at the moment what we're seeing is organizations are working with us on an ad hoc basis, on a need by need basis. And then you're getting more and more people within an organization working with you. And so how do you give an organization an enterprise scale solution where you're not just helping them on one-off requirements, where you're giving them a solution to think about not just how do I fill these immediate needs, but how can I rethink the way that I build capability? How can I rethink the way that I get things done? How can I rethink the way that I build my talent, my human capital? And so I sort of thought, well, the only way for us to help them do that is to give them a solution that could actually allow them to transition from fixed capability, all my workforce being permanent, very rigid capabilities. Well, give them a solution that gave them an alternative to transition to a model where they're actually able to build a big proportion of their professional workforce as being independent. So this concept of this independent workforce in a box came, and then, clever marketeers in our business came up with the terminology around virtual bench. The concept of that being, let me build an ecosystem of talent curated around my demand needs, my skill needs, where I am seeking flexibility, I'm seeking the ability to ramp up and ramp down those capabilities. So those capabilities where I see a need for flexibility, or I see a future demand, but I don't know if it's materialized yet. Build that ecosystem of talent curated for that specific organization, allowing them to actually access that through a product, and then take ownership of it and build increasingly diverse and broader pools of talent and build out their bench as an enterprise.
So we are the people who are curating these different pools, right?
Yes.
And we're responsible for keeping them fresh, making sure that there's always enough people available with these particular skills.
Exactly. So initially we thought, okay, there's a product there. So can you just stand up a product that has, 1,000 people, in a bench based around the skills that the organization said? On a day one, that works. On day one, the organization will say to us, okay, these are the 5 skills, these are the 3 locations, and we stand up a bench of talent that aligns to that. But talent demands and human capital needs and capability needs are dynamic. So to leave that product static essentially means that your capabilities become stuck. So we then said, okay, well, what this needs is a bench manager, right? It needs someone to actually both build, maintain, and manage that bench. Because also, if you think about it from the talent's perspective, we realize that when we think about the virtual bench, we can't just think about it from the client's perspective. We also have to think about the independent. So what is it bringing to the independent? Well, with the independent, it's great to be on as many virtual benches as you can, because that increases your chances to win a project. But we also saw a need to, how do you engage your bench? You can't just have a bench and then a year later someone's been on there for 12 months, say, hi, you're on my bench, are you available for a project? So our role there became the bench manager. How do you help ensure that it's constantly dynamically evolving based on the changing needs of the organization? 2, how do you maintain it, make sure there's enough depth and breadth? Because the biggest thing about the bench is these are independents. So availability, right, is the trade-off, right? So if I need someone tomorrow, how do I know that those people on that bench are going to be available? Well, the way that you address that is 1, through depth, so you build a large enough bench, but 2, engagement. So we realized that part of our role was also to support the engagement of those individuals on behalf of the organization, or facilitate that engagement. So the individuals felt still part of something. And so we encourage our clients to actually speak to these individuals prior to, maybe to assess them and quality assure them prior to engaging them, building a relationship, having some communication, which means that when the call comes for someone on your bench, they're ready and they know who you are and they're ready to be deployed. So that bench management became increasingly important. So now the product, which gives you this independent workforce in a box curated around your needs, is supported by a bench management, which ensures that independent workforce is continually moving with you.
And that's a combination of the clients doing certain things to keep them engaged, but also us as the kind of product owner having services wrapped around that to the talent on those benches. Right?
Exactly. Because I think for large organizations to manage their own employee base and engage and communicate and build brand, it's very time consuming. And then if you add a parallel workforce to it, I think a huge value add that we're able to bring to clients and why they love this proposition is you're essentially creating that employer brand for them within this new parallel workforce. Mm-hmm. And you're keeping those people engaged, you're representing them. And so when they tap into that talent pool, into that capability base, they get responsiveness, as opposed to, hey, we don't know who you are. So yeah.
And we started off this discussion, explaining the traditional benches in consulting firms.
Yeah.
These virtual benches, they're not just for consulting firms, right?
Exactly. So the big enterprises have really loved this as well. So consulting firms get it completely as a concept, and the communication term is the communication term is, hey, do you like the idea of a bench without the fixed cost?
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, yes, we get that and we get the value of it, but I get the additional value of this bench because it's not all those things we talked about earlier. It's not fixed. It's not costing me anything. It's dynamic, and I've got someone else managing it, and I still get all the upsides. So I've seen many consulting firms now seeing this as a whole new model for capability building and delivery models. It's a whole new model. And my bet would be that if we get this right, you could really see a transformation in terms of how consulting firms ultimately think about bench building, and potentially outsource it to a product and service like this. I think for big enterprises, it was a newer concept. But where we've seen it really work is not just in the project base, but actually for traditional capability building. And if we give you an example, so a bank that we work with really deeply, working them for a number of years, wanted to build out a new data science team within the bank from scratch. They looked at it as a thing, and they needed to hire many different skills: data scientists, data analytics, data engineering, data visualization, many different data skills within this overall data team. They had the head of data already hired as a permanent person, and this was a whole new function. And they decided, having talked to us for a while, to use Virtual Bench to build this. And they looked at a hybrid model where the head of data hired 2 or 3 critical people within the organization, within the data teams. They hired 3 or 4 permanent people within that team. But then the rest of the capability and capacity they needed, they asked us to build them a virtual bench of cross-skilled data related independence. And what that allowed them to do is, in this new capability that they were building, this new function, have this hybrid model, which meant that their cost base was maintained at a consistent level. But when business demand for their work, when projects came in, when new business demand, they were quickly able to just ramp up with a few people for a few months and then ramp back down. And so we started to see organizations and big corporates see it as a new way to actually building core functions, whether that's marketing or data or technology or digital, or any other function within an organization. We started to see these hybrid models coming in with virtual benches. Another example would be an insurance client where they had seasonal increases in demand for actuarial skills and pricing skills. So what we saw there was, hey, for seasonal demand, we know it's going to come in every year, but do we hire at that level and just find other jobs for those people to do, which essentially they'd been doing? So they have a much more inflated cost base, and they're trying to deploy people onto other things. They saw the virtual bench as being an ability to support that seasonal demand that was going to come in. And they really, truly engaged those individuals. And so those people knew that between these 3 or 4 months of the year, they should keep their diaries open because they knew this client would be, coming to them for, some really interesting work. So we're starting to see organizations really look at it quite strategically. And the consulting firms, as I say, were already very bought in.
Cool. And maybe just to finish things off, in terms of practically, how do the client access these virtual benches? How does it work in terms of access and, I guess, one step before, what's the start of the project and how they then access it?
Yeah. So if we take it to the beginning, so when we first work with a client, if you imagine the virtual bench comes preloaded, if you want to use a better term. So we'll know, based on the client sector, based on the type of organization, based on our initial conversations, we get a sense of, hey, this organization could probably value these particular types of benches. So there's a preloading of, hey, here's some benches that we think you may be interested in before we built up an insight base. So that's the great thing, is it is just on day one, you sort of, you've got access to this workforce. Then what happens is, over time, our clients can access that. They can log in, they can access the product, they can access the benches. They're then able to work with our bench managers and request additional pools of talent, additional benches. So the conversation will go, okay, well, great, I like the 3 benches we have, but me as an individual, I would like this additional bench to be built, right, within this skill set. So then we build that bench out and it becomes available to that particular individual. So you can actually end up having 3 types of benches within the product. So benches that Outsized as an organization think that you'd be interested in based on our understanding of you as an organization. 2, benches as you as an individual within that organization has built or requested. So me, Anurag, I will go in and see my benches. And then you also have organizational wide benches. So this is where, as long as an organization gives you access rights as an employee, what we're able to then do is leverage the benches that other people within your organization, with other colleagues, are actually building. So if you're sitting in a marketing team in Singapore, and your colleague's sitting in a marketing team in Hong Kong, and they've built a Southeast Asia, growth hacking, SEO, SEM, MarTech, virtual bench for Southeast Asia, you can actually go in and see that bench is being created and say, well, actually, I need a similar set of capabilities. I can tap into that bench. So you can start to leverage, the capabilities being built by other colleagues, share, as well as have your own, your own benches that you've built just for you or your function or your division. The important thing to note is that these individuals, as I say, are not exclusive to that organization. But they are curated and aligned to those particular needs. And so the importance is to ensure availability, as I say, depth and engagement.
Great.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add that I haven't asked, that I should have asked you about?
Buy it now.
No, but on a serious note, if there's anyone who is interested to learn more, feel free to get in touch with either Anurag or myself. And
absolutely.
We'll tell you,
Absolutely.
more about it.
And what I'm enjoying about the product is we're co-creating with our clients. So a number of our clients who are further ahead of their curve in their thinking and are really adopting these new models have been co-creating the product and the solution with us, and which means that we're building things in line with how organizations actually think about it. And so we're keen to work with other organizations that might want to be involved.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much, Anurag. That was excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.